This is a sweet system. Today, I want to show you the basics of moving time lapses. All right, now let's talk about what is a moving time lapse. Moving time lapse is a lot like a normal time lapse, except there's a little bit of movement to it. So every time you take a picture, it'll move, take a picture, move, take a picture, move, take a picture. And then when you put it all together, you have this dynamic movement and it just looks amazing. It really will up your production value, and I try to bring one of these with me everywhere I go. Now, if you want to get into all this, I know it can be a little bit confusing because there's a lot of different pieces that are involved. But once you start doing it and you use a couple different systems, you realize that it's all pretty simple. All you need, obviously a camera, but you're going to need a slider. Most companies make sliders to go with their time-lapse devices. So basically 2 rails, and then you're going to be running up and down on the rails. Then you're going to need some sort of motor, something to drive it up and down. Now I've got a couple different systems here. So in this case, this is the motor. This is a Syrp. It sits on top of my slider and it pulls this string, right? And on this one here, this is the motor. And that is powered by the units here, and that pulls the string. So this whole thing slides like this, okay? The next thing that you're gonna need is some sort of controller. So here on the Harrope, I've got this controller. Here on the Syrp, I have this controller. And then of course you're gonna need some power source. This has a battery inside it right here, and on the Harrope, I have a battery source right here. See? So essentially all you're gonna need, a slider, a motor, a controller, and some sort of power source. Now these 2 moving time-lapse units are good representation of the 2 different ways that you can make it work. This is the Syrp on a Rhino slider, and essentially the motor, the controller, and the power source are all right here inside of this device. And you can take it off like this, you can switch it around. When you click that onto it, it slides up and down, basically down your slider. Right? Now this Harrope, which is one I'm going to go into in a little more detail, is a lot like all the rest. Dynamic Perceptions, the Rhino ones, the Kessler ones. Essentially what you have is a motor on the end of your slider, and it's going to run your camera back and forth on it. You have a separate controller and a separate battery source. Sometimes batteries are mounted here on the back. Now I am going to go into detail here on this Harrope in this video, but before I do that I want to give you a quick overview of where things are at, who are the big players, and how much things cost. So Dynamic Perception, their basically intro package is about $1,295. Rhino has a similar one. They have sliders and motorized units. $1,140 is about as cheap as you can get the basic unit for that. Syrp's whole package is about $1,137. Kessler makes one that's about $2,000. And then Harrope, which is kind of your budget option, is only $507. So if you're getting into moving time lapses for 500 bucks, this is a steal. I mean, you're gonna get the whole thing in pieces. So the slider, $100 to $200. The motor's about $125. 100 bucks for the battery, and then the controller is about $179. Everything can be bought individually. Or you can kind of buy it as a package. I mean, a lot of this is just build it on your own. So part of the reason I want to do this is Harrope is a new company. It's a Spanish company. Basically, it's just one guy who's making this. He wants to make something that's economical for people because this is really an expensive thing to do, but it doesn't have to be. I mean, these pieces are not all that expensive. So he sends it and you more or less build it yourself. It doesn't necessarily have all the bells and whistles of some of the ones from the more expensive units, but if you have a screwdriver and you can just kind of read directions, you put it all together and it's really easy. By the way, I should mention that I'm not getting paid to do this. He did send me the slider so I could try it out. I was pretty impressed. So here's how it works. Okay, essentially this slider, couple metal rods, and then over here is the motor. Now what you do, the motor is attached via this cord over here to the controller right here. So this, I plug it into the slider motor, see that? And then from here, this is going to plug into the camera. This is a shutter release cord that works with my particular camera, so I'm going to just plug it in right here so you can see how that works. So that's plugged in right there. And then the last thing is you take the battery, and this battery then plugs into the controller. All right, let me show you a couple of the neat features of this. Now that I have the controller up, you can do free move. So I'm just going to click on free move. And then I just turn the wheels. Look at that. Motorized slider. You can control the speed, fast, slow. I could also do video. And video, essentially what I'm going to do is I'll set a start and a stop position. That'll be the start position. Set up my end position. I'll actually tell it how long do I want it to be. It's 18-second move. Start and then loop. Yes. Okay. Now this is a neat feature. This is the time-lapse mode. I'll just click on this. And so just like the video function, essentially what you do is you're going to set a start position and a stop position. So let's move it over here to the front. Okay, so that's our start position. Okay, so that'll be our stop position. And then what you do here is you say, how many pictures do you want? So for a 10-second time-lapse, I'm going to want 300. So I'm going to go to 300. That'll be easy. Yep. Okay, so it's going to the start position, and it's going to do its thing. And then I say, go. So basically all it's doing is it's taking one quick snapshot, it's moving to the next position, taking another snapshot, and it's going to do that. It's going to take, actually how long? Oh, and the neat thing on this one is it tells me it's going to take 9 minutes and 56 seconds left to do the 310 images. I mean, all I did was plug in the controller, the battery source, into the motor, hooked it up to the slider, and then hooked it to the camera, and it's doing its thing. I would say the only thing you gotta do is make sure you're doing some cord management, because you have all these cords, you just wanna set them so that they're not gonna run into each other. Then you sit back, have a coffee, let it do its thing. Now I'm not really treating this as a review per se, but the one thing you have to know with the Harrope is it doesn't have all the bells and whistles. If you're out in the rain, say, this little unit here is kind of exposed to the weather, so you'll wanna cover that up. If you cover that up and you make sure that this thing is covered up, then you're probably good to go. You won't have to worry about it too much. So I bring a plastic Ziploc bag and I put it all in there. Special thanks to Haley for filming this one. If there is a particular time-lapse unit or moving time-lapse unit that you want me to look at in a little more detail, put a link down below. I'm contacting a bunch of these companies, seeing if they'll send me something just to test out, and then I send it back to them. Thanks everybody for watching. I definitely would encourage you to check out Harrope. I'll leave links down below to their website. It's a great economical one to get started with. I'm going to be doing reviews and kind of testing out some of the other ones to make a grander series of how to use all of these out in the field. And finally, if there's a particular one you use or one that you'd like me to kind of look at in a little more depth, leave your comments down below. I always enjoy reading those. It helps us all out as well. And we'll see you in a future video.